Hello, dear listener. Today I'm going to tell you about a terrible cyclone. Enjoy your viewing. Cyclone Bhola was a devastating tropical cyclone that struck the territories of East Pakistan in Indian West Bengal on November 12, 1970. The deadliest tropical cyclone and one of the most devastating natural disasters in modern history. Up to 500,000 people died as a result of the storm surge that flooded many low-lying islands of the Ganges Delta. It was the sixth storm cyclone in the 1970 North Indian Ocean hurricane season and the strongest this year, reaching category. For hurricane strength on the Saffir-Simpson scale, please like this video and subscribe to this new channel and you will see many more interesting and useful things. The cyclone formed over the central part of the Bay of Bengal on November 8th. After which it began to shift northward, gaining strength at the same time. It reached its peak power on November 11th, and the next day in the evening there was contact with the coastline of East Pakistan. The storm surge devastated numerous coastal islands, sweeping away entire villages in its path and destroying the agricultural lands of the region. In the most affected area of the country, Tazumad and Upazila, more than 45% of the 167,000 population died. The Pakistani government, led by General Yahya Khan, has been sharply criticized for its slow response to the disaster, both by political leaders in East Pakistan and by the international media. In the first parliamentary elections in the country's history in December 1970, the East Pakistani opposition Awami League Party won a landslide victory, and the ongoing confrontation resulted in a war of independence, which resulted in the creation of the state of Bangladesh. One of the cultural consequences of the natural disaster is the organization by former Beatles member George Harrison in 1971 of a charity concert for Bangladesh to raise funds for victims of Cyclone Bhola, thereby laying the foundations for events of this kind. The remnants of Pacific tropical storm Nora, which swept over the South China Sea, crossed the Malay Peninsula on November 5th and continued moving westward. On the morning of November 8th, these residual phenomena developed into a new tropical depression over the central part of the Bay of Bengal. The depression continued to gain strength, gradually shifting northward, and the next day the Indian Meteorological Department assigned it the status of a storm cyclone. Having almost stalled for a whole day, by November 10th the storm accelerated its movement to the north. On November 11th, the force of the elements increased again, and, once in the upper part of the Bay of Bengal, it turned to the northeast. A distinct eye of the storm formed in the area of rotation of the cyclone, and the storm's strength peaked with sustained wind speeds of 150 miles per hour and an atmospheric pressure of 720 millimeters of mercury, which corresponded to a category for hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale. On the evening of November 12th, the cyclone hit the coast of East Pakistan, which approximately coincided with the onset of the local tide. Once over land, the hurricane system began to weaken, while maintaining the strength of a storm cyclone, until November 13th, which was recorded about 100 kilometers south-southeast of Agartala. In the evening of the same day, the storm rapidly lost its former power, degenerating into an area of low pressure over the southern part of the Indian state of Assam. The Joint Research Laboratory for the Control of Cholera Diseases in Pakistan conducted two medical examinations, the first in November 1970, the second in February-March 1971. The purpose of the first survey was to determine immediate medical measures for the affected areas. The second, more detailed examination aimed to develop a long-term care and recovery planning program. According to the results of the first survey, it was found that the salt content in surface waters is comparable to water from wells, with the exception of Sudharam, located in Noakhali Sadar Upazila of Noakhali district. The water there was unsuitable for drinking, since the salt content in it was 0.5%. The death rate was estimated at 14.2%, which was equivalent to 240,000 deaths. The nature of typical injuries, as a rule, did not include minor bodily injuries. Severe scratches on limbs and body predominated, indicating that the surviving victims were clinging to trees and the ruins of their own homes so that they would not be blown away by the storm. In the first weeks, there were fears of outbreaks of cholera and typhoid epidemics, but the survey did not reveal traces of cholera, smallpox, or any other epidemic disease in the areas affected by the disaster. The conclusions of the second survey contained somewhat understated estimates, since several groups of the population were no longer included in these surveys. 100,000 seasonal workers who went to harvest rice crops in other parts of the country completely ruined families who left over the past 3 months, and just people who wanted to leave the dangerous region. All these segments of the population were not included in the report, and rumors and obvious exaggerations were also eliminated. As a result, the resulting amount decreased, and the report concluded that the total number of victims of Cyclone Bhola was at least 224,000 people. The most affected area was Tazumid in Upazila, where 46.3% of the population died, which was more than 77,000 people. The overall mortality rate in the area affected by the disaster was estimated at 16.5. The final survey data revealed that the highest survival rate was observed among men aged 15 to 49 years, while more than half of all deaths occurred in children under 10 years of age, who formed a third of the region's population before the tragedy. Thus, the cyclone and its consequences destroyed selective groups of people in the form of children, the sick, and the elderly. Months after the storm, the death rate in the disaster-hit area was lower than in the laboratory-controlled region around Dhaka. The findings of the research laboratory show that the least viable individuals died during the hurricane.